Hey there, it's Mike Metcalf again with Lanark Equipment. Just a real quick one for you today. We're going to be going over some different ideas and specs and requirements with the Excavator lineup. We have a lot of questions about what can people tow with a regular G license versus having to have a DZ or an ARZ or all the different sort of qualifications, where that sort of weight line is, some of the different features. So we're going to do a bit of a broad brushstroke here because we are currently becoming one of Eastern Ontario's fastest growing construction dealers. We got so many pieces of equipment here, we got to stash them all around the lot. So we're going to go into a bit of a broad brushstroke here. Stick around for all the details. All right, so we're going to do a bit of a walk down the line here and go through a little bit on each machine, and as well, like I said, we want to talk about what it takes to pull these units out of here. So we'll do a little bit of that. Now, just so you're aware as well, our lineup is set up for aesthetics, not for size. So we've got some bigger units down here, we've got some of our smaller down there, and the biggest in the middle. So we'll be touching on a little bit of everything as we walk down the line, but there's no rhyme or reason necessarily for the order in which these are sitting. Right behind me and just to my right here are two KX 033-4s, one with an angle blade and one with a straight blade. Now there is a unit slightly smaller than this I don't have in stock, surprisingly. I seem to have one of everything else, but the KX 030 is actually one of the smaller units you can get that still has an air conditioning in the cab. There are some cabs available on some of the smaller units as well, but you need to get into that 3-ton kind of size to have a full heated and air-conditioned cab. So that's just something to know right there. The 033-4, the 030-4, you know, the U35, all of that sort of 3.5-ton unit, that's really kind of getting to the very edge of what you can pull with a regular G license. I do have a customer that was able to get an 040, and by pairing it with an aluminum trailer and lightening up that actual trailer itself, was able to pull an 040 with a G license. But really, that's this guy right here. Once you're into that, anything bigger, no matter how you kind of play the trailer or anything like that, you're going to need to have a bigger designation on your license to be able to haul that legally. So you certainly want to always know the weight of your equipment, the weight of your trailer, and ultimately what your truck can pull as well. Friendly little thing to know here, when you're buying a new truck, they generally plate them for the lowest thing possible to keep the cost down. So always know what your weights are and what you're registered for to make sure that you don't have any trouble out on the road there, regardless of what you're pulling. So again, you start talking these 033s, U35, 040. This is obviously going to be the type of customer that's an established landscaper. Maybe even on a farm you might see something in this size for pulling stumps and you know, cleaning fence rows and different things like that, opening trails. But usually when you're into this size of a unit, you're into some kind of landscaping. You're going to be moving a little bit of armor stone. You've got that digging depth to be able to get right down, even if you were doing some light sewer work. You know, these are the types of machines that you're going to want to be looking at, and then we can kind of work a little bit further down in terms of size and show you what else we got as well. So we've moved just a little bit further down here. I still got the 040 on my right, just so you know where we're at here. I've got an 057 behind me and an 080 behind that. You probably start to notice too on the model numbers that some of the Dash 5s are starting to come in. So the Dash 5s have been upgraded. You know, there's no more keys. We're dealing with a pin pad now for starting. They're coming standard right from Kubota with telematics. And once you start getting into the 040, the 57, and the 080, you also start to get other blade options, like not just having angle, but also having tilt, that 6-way blade, so you can really fine tune that sort of final grading after a dig. So as you start getting up into these bigger units, obviously we're looking into bigger companies, construction companies, you know, the ability to handle bigger armor stone, not just over the blade, but now over the side of the machine as well. And as I say that, it's something to consider. We do have a lot of people that they ask, well, what does an excavator lift? You know, depending on whatever model, but it's a question that requires multiple answers, because your lift capacity, it depends on where your bucket is. If you've got the bucket over the blade, it's not very high off the ground and it's close to the excavator, you're going to lift a heck of a lot more than if it's over the side of the machine, completely extended and all the way up in the air. So it's something you really got to know what it is you're trying to do, what it is you're trying to lift, and then you can look at the machine to see how you can maneuver that around safely and find yourself in the right machine. So, you know, whether you're into a 4-ton or an 8-ton, or even down into the little 1-ton, which I've made videos on as well. At the end of the day, you really got to know your application, and then any good sales guy would be able to direct you to the machine that's going to handle that load safely and keep you working ahead without any problems. When you start getting into the 040, if you've got a heavy steel trailer, the 5.7, the 080, this is when you're starting getting into the D or the A class kind of pulling stuff. Or again, like I had a limited AZ or an ARZ, there's different ways to call it, but basically you need to have that capacity on your license to pull that kind of weight. And again, from a safety perspective, you want to be within those regulations anyways, because just because you can get something rolling doesn't mean you can get it stopped. So you definitely want to make sure that your package is compatible. It's going to keep everybody safe, keep everybody going home at the end of the day, and getting those jobs done. So you start getting into this, really have a look at your license, have a look at the weight of your trailer, and make sure that you're compliant and that you're going to keep yourself safe. All right, so we've moved a little bit further down the line there. You might be able to see it in the background, that big counterweight sticking out. That's the 080. Beside it is a U48 and yet another 040-5. The 040s are incredibly popular. I try to keep a few on the site whenever possible. So that's how far we've moved down the line. And now we're at the U27 and the 008. There are some other pieces of equipment here that are missing. There's the U17, there's the KX 018, and there's even the U10. So there's a few other machines that we don't have in the lineup here, but realistically from the 27 down, this is kind of your homeowner, hobby farm, estate kind of machines. Because even though this machine's got a cab on it, there is no AC. So to give you the heat, it'll keep you out of the weather. Certainly it's going to keep the bugs off you, and it's going to give you the ability to have some tunes while you work, but there's no air conditioning in this. So that's why we don't often see these getting into the landscaping world, just because those guys are in the cab, 10 to 14 hours a day, and they want that AC, especially on those burny days. So when we get into the U27 and down, like I said, we're into the homeowner sort of world. Still a very capable machine, but certainly everything from here down is absolutely pullable with just a G license. You're still going to, for the most part, need to be into a twin axle unit until you get into the really, really small guys, and even there, that's going to be tight because they're pretty heavy. So it's always good to have a twin axle, something with brakes on it, because again, getting things rolling is generally the easy part. It's getting them stopped again once they're at speed that you really want to be careful of. So you're better to have more trailer than you need than not enough. And that's going to keep the MTO guys off your back as well. Stay compliant, stay safe, get the right package, get it put together properly, and you're always going to go home at the end of the day without any problems or tickets. So one thing to point out, and this is true with all the units here, when you're looking at the specs in the brochures or online or anything like that, they're going to give you the weight of the unit. Now sometimes they'll include an operator, which is usually well under my weight, so I don't know what kind of operator they got, but they sometimes will include that. But one thing that they don't include are the accessories. So if you start adding a pile of buckets, if you throw a breaker on there, or a post hole digger, or grinder, or anything else, again, if you're into that 040 aluminum trailer and you throw a grinder on there, you're over. If you have a whole whack of buckets and a breaker or have a burger, you're over. So you really, really got to nail down your weights, because the MTO guys are very black and white. There's not a lot of gray there. If you're over by a pound, you're over, and they're going to be more than happy to give you a ticket on that. So you really, like I said, you're better to have more trailer than not enough, and you're better to have more license than not enough. So once you start getting into those 4-ton and bigger, really nail down what it is you're doing, what you're going to be carrying. Are you going to be having any aggregate on the truck that's pulling it as well? All of those things are things you want to consider before buying a machine, because once you start getting into the $100,000 machines and better, it's not something you want to buy that you can't pull around. You don't want it stuck at your house. So make sure that you do the homework, make sure you know the weight of your buckets and any other accessories you're going to have, and make sure that it falls well under the trailer spec so that you don't get yourself in trouble. There are some ways to cheat that a little bit. Maybe you got to pull the machine a little bit further ahead to share more tongue weight with the machine, but even that's a fine line. So again, better to have more license, better to have more trailer, and talk to your sales rep about the specs you need to know to get those weights figured out and locked down before you purchase. I hope that this covered any questions that you might have about weight and trailering. Certainly, we can get into more specifics if you give us a call. If you have more questions about it, please don't hesitate to leave a comment down below. Hit the like and subscribe if you'd like to see these videos keep coming to you, and you can even make suggestions about videos you'd like to see in the future. But the best thing you can do is come on down and see us at Lanark Equipment. We're at 6253 Highway 43 in Perth, right between Perth and Smiths Falls, or give us a call at 613-264-0485, and we'll see you on the next one.